Isabella Talos' life flashed by like a bright but brief spark. It seemed as if she had a premonition that fate had allotted her little time, so she sought to savor every moment, to love and dream to the fullest. But destiny proved merciless to this charming girl, cutting her story short on its most beautiful page. Why? What for? These questions remained unanswered. Isabella came into the world on June 8, 1999, in sunny Colorado. When she and her younger sister Lucy were still tiny tots, their parents, Joshua and Anna, decided to divorce. It turned out that Joshua was completely unprepared for the burden of parental responsibilities. So Anna took on the role of sole caregiver for her daughters, managing to work and look after the home at the same time. A whole decade passed before Joshua found the strength and desire to become a real family man again. And Anna, despite the bitterness of past grievances, decided to give him another chance. They reconciled, but this union lasted only 5 years and eventually fell apart for good. Later, Anna started anew with another man and gave birth to a son by him. Thus, for Isabella and Lucy, the quarrels between their parents, their breakups and reconciliations, became a familiar part of life. But despite everything, the sisters managed to maintain warm relationships with both their mother and father. Isabella was distinguished by extraordinary kindness and trustfulness. She studied accounting at the University of Denver, but secretly, under the cover of night, she sketched designs of exquisite dresses in her notebooks. Deep in her heart, the girl cherished the dream of becoming a fashion designer. And working part-time as a model for local brands became for her a kind of secret escape into the wondrous world of beauty. Meanwhile, the younger Lucy, unlike her romantic sister, consciously chose a pragmatic path and decided to become a forensic criminalist. The disheartening example of their parents' marriage forced both girls to subconsciously avoid serious relationships with the opposite sex. By her 20th birthday, Isabella had come to believe that love was nothing more than a pretty fairy tale. But everything changed the day when, during another photo shoot, her eyes met those of a young man named Darian Simon. Darian was 5 years older than Isabella, worked as a photographer, and had his own studio. Moreover, he had even started his own clothing brand with the telling name, Be a Good Person. Isabella and Darian had an amazing amount in common, a passion for fashion, beauty, and the art of photography. In addition, Darian, like Isabella, had grown up in a single-parent family and also did not believe in love. So it's not surprising that the young people quickly grew close and started dating, although at first they preferred not to publicize their romance. Only Lucy knew that her sister was in love. And when Isabella's mother found out about everything, she immediately became worried about her older daughter. Anna did not want the girl to repeat her own mistakes and rush into a marriage that she would later regret. The mother watched the development of Isabella and Darian's relationship, while the feelings between the lovers only grew stronger. Eventually, they stopped hiding and openly declared their bond. In April 2020, a heated argument erupted between Isabella and her mother. The offended girl, succumbing to emotions, hastily packed her things and moved in with Darian at his new apartment. This reckless act later became an inexhaustible source of painful remorse for Anna. She was firmly convinced that if Isabella had not left home that day, the tragedy could have been avoided. Over time, mother and daughter nevertheless reconciled and restored their former warmth in their relationship. This allowed the family to celebrate two important milestones together, Isabella's 21st birthday and Lucy's 19th, which almost coincided in time. On June 7, 2020, a lavish celebration took place on the roof of a posh restaurant. Anna took care of every little detail, striving to make this day truly special and unforgettable. All those present beamed with happy smiles, posing for family photos. No one had any idea then that these pictures would very soon become a priceless memory of a carefree past. The birthday cake ordered by Anna turned out so beautiful that no one even dared to cut it into pieces. Isabella took the cake home, and the very next morning she sent her mother a photo in which she savored a piece for breakfast. But less than 2 days passed before a terrible tragedy occurred. June 10, 2020, began like any other day. Darian and Isabella woke up quite late. That day the girl was going to meet with her mother to finally receive from her the long-awaited birthday present. And Darian planned to invite a friend over in the evening to play computer games together. But in the morning, the young man noticed that his beloved dog, a pit bull mix, was feeling unwell. The animal looked lethargic and depressed. So at 11:30, Darian and Isabella decided to take the pup for a walk. The girl held the leash while Darian carried bags for cleaning. The lovers headed to the neighboring building in the city center, hoping that the fresh air and movement would benefit their pet and help it cheer up a bit. Reaching a bench, Darian sat down to rest, while Isabella remained standing next to the dog. The young people were chatting casually with each other, simultaneously trying to persuade their four-legged friend to do its business in the bushes. Suddenly, from a dark window of the neighboring building, someone shouted, full of aggression, "Hey you, are you finally going to deal with the dog or are you going to keep yelling at it?" Darian tensed up instantly. He tried to make out the face of the shouter, but in vain. The window opening gaped with impenetrable darkness. Alarming thoughts raced through the young man's mind. Who is this man? And why is he so enraged? But despite his inner anxiety, Darian replied, ostentatiously maintaining an imperturbable tone, "My dog is perfectly well trained, he's been with me for 4 years now." With these words, the young man rose from the bench, took the leash from Isabella's hands, and walked away. But at that very moment, his gaze darted back to the window, and what Darian saw made him grow cold with horror. A rifle was aimed directly at them. "What, you're going to shoot me?" was all the stunned Darian managed to exclaim. And then shots rang out. That morning, 19-year-old Lucy had taken her younger brother to a friend's house, and then decided to stop by a cafe and order herself lunch. While the girl was waiting for her order, her phone rang. It was one of Isabella's friends. "Hi, how are you? Listen, you don't happen to know where Isabella might be, do you? Have you two been in touch lately? Maybe it's worth giving her a call," the friend asked, almost imploringly. Lucy was confused and didn't quite understand what these inquiries were leading to, but she suddenly felt an anxiety that ran like a chill down her spine. After the conversation, she immediately dialed Isabella's number, but she didn't pick up. This seemed extremely suspicious to Lucy, so she decided to track her sister's geolocation via an app. The program showed that Isabella's phone was somewhere near Darian's house. Lucy calmed down a little. Apparently, her sister had just decided to visit her boyfriend, and everything was fine with her. But just a moment later, Lucy received a message from a mutual acquaintance. In it, she was urgently asked to contact Darian's family and was sent a link to some terrifying news about a shooting that had occurred very close to his home. The girl was gripped by real panic. With trembling hands, she began to dial her mother's number. It turned out that Anna was just in a store not far from the same cafe where Lucy was ordering her lunch. Mother and daughter agreed to meet immediately and rushed to the hospital together. From the medics, they learned the terrible news: one person was killed on the spot, and another was wounded. Anna rushed to ask about her daughter Isabella Talos, but none of the staff had even heard of her. Instead, when the woman mentioned Darian Simon's name, she was told that he was currently in the surgical ward. Anna paced the hospital corridors in despair. None of the medical staff could clearly explain to her what had happened and where Isabella was now. In desperation, the woman grabbed her smartphone and began to feverishly scroll through the news feed. Suddenly, her attention was drawn to a report directly from the scene of the tragedy. The drone camera slowly surveyed the eerie picture. In the middle of a pool of blood lay a motionless body, covered with a white cloth. Only one female leg was visible from under the shroud, but Anna immediately recognized her daughter, by the shoes and pedicure that they had done together shortly before her birthday. The terrible realization crashed over the mother: her beloved Isabella had died during the shooting. Grief engulfed Anna like a tsunami, causing her to choke on sobs and silent screams. Why, oh why did this happen to her bright, kind, harmless daughter? What had they done to deserve such a cruel injustice of fate? Meanwhile, the shocked Lucy, barely holding back tears, informed her father about the terrible news, and then headed towards the scene of the tragedy. She wanted to see with her own eyes what had actually happened to her sister. When the girl reached the building where the shooting took place, police and forensic experts were still working there. But none of them even paid attention to Lucy's presence. Utterly confused and helpless, she felt superfluous, like a fifth wheel. But despite this, the girl was determined to find out the whole truth about Isabella's fate. Recalling her knowledge of forensics gleaned during her studies at college, Lucy began to carefully look around, trying not to miss a single detail at the crime scene. The police marked exactly 56 yellow tags on the pavement and lawn, indicating evidence and debris found. Suddenly, Lucy's gaze caught on an unknown figure standing apart and holding a dog on a leash. Coming closer, the girl recognized her sister and Darian's pet in the animal. The stranger explained that the dog had been aimlessly wandering the next street, so the man had decided to intercept it in order to later return it to its owners. Later, investigators were able to reconstruct the horrific course of events of that fateful day, step by step. Shortly after the aggressive altercation with the couple walking the dog, the unknown assailant locked himself in the next room. There he borrowed from his roommate a whole arsenal of weapons, including an assault rifle. Armed, the villain returned to the window and began a frenzied shooting. Shots rang out one after another, 24 bullets hitting the defenseless Darian and Isabella with such furious speed that they didn't even have time to comprehend what was happening. Isabella was the crazed shooter's first victim. The girl did not utter a single word in his direction, but even that did not appease the attacker's blind rage. Right before Darian's eyes, one of the bullets hit the girl in the back, and she instantly fell to the ground as if mowed down. The bewildered young man rushed to escape, but a hail of fire caught up with him too. In a matter of seconds it was all over. The inexorable killer vanished back into the bowels of the building as suddenly as he had appeared before. The wounded Darian, bleeding profusely, crawled with his last strength away from the cursed window. 2 bullets were lodged in his body, causing excruciating pain, and one single thought was pounding in the young man's head, to get to his beloved, to save Isabella. But it was in vain. A moment later consciousness left him. Through the fog of oblivion, Darian vaguely heard some shouts, the confused voices of people who had run to the sound of the shots. One of those present, without losing his head, quickly took off his belt and tied it around the young man's leg above the wound, thus stopping the fatal bleeding from the damaged artery. Only thanks to this simple but extremely important act of a chance rescuer did Darian manage to survive. Izzy. My Izzy. Where is she? What's wrong with her? The unconscious young man silently moved his parched lips over and over again. But no one ever told him the terrible truth. The paramedics who arrived on the call took the wounded man to the hospital. Darian's condition was extremely critical, but the doctors fought with all their might for his life, and in the end their superhuman efforts were crowned with success. The police tracked down the perpetrator quite quickly. He turned out to be 36-year-old Michael Close. With a weapon in his hands, he tried to escape into the mountains in his SUV, but thanks to the vigilance and coordinated actions of witnesses to the tragedy, the cops managed to establish his identity and detain him soon after. The court hearing in Close's case began with the official bringing of charges. The man was accused of the insidious murder of Isabella Talos and the attempt on the life of Darian Simon. He was also charged with illegal possession of a whole arsenal of firearms, including the assault rifle with which he shot the lovers. Despite the frantic pressure from the prosecution, Michael stubbornly refused to admit his guilt. And this despite the fact that the interior of his car was literally stuffed with barrels. The most striking fact of this eerie incident was that before the events described, Close had no problems with the law. Moreover, even friends and close relatives described the suspect as a completely adequate and balanced man. As for the motives for his act, according to the testimony of Michael's ex-girlfriend, a serious quarrel had broken out between them on the eve of the tragedy. The woman also reported that her ex-lover had suffered for a long time from prolonged depression and other mental disorders, which were further exacerbated by the regular use of psychotropic substances. Shortly after the massacre, Michael, in an extremely unstable emotional state, contacted his girlfriend and confessed to the crime he had committed. His voice trembled with the realization of the irreversibility of what he had done, Close said that he had brutally taken the lives of 2 people. The woman immediately begged him to surrender to the police, but Michael at that moment was morally too shaken to heed the voice of reason. Then our heroine showed remarkable civic consciousness and, fearing that her ex would wreak even more havoc, called the police on her own. She informed law enforcement of Michael's likely whereabouts, hoping to prevent an even greater tragedy. As it later turned out, the killer was a longtime friend of a police officer named Dan. In fact, it was in this cop's home that Close's entire arsenal was stored, including the same AK-47 assault rifle. After the incident, Michael managed to send a message to his friend, in which he vehemently complained about the unbearable rage he felt towards the couple with the dog, who allegedly drove him mad. So it's not surprising that the families of the victims sued Dan in court, justifiably accusing him of egregious negligence that led to grave consequences. Because of the civil suit, the hapless cop friend even had to hastily resign from the Denver department. However, as a subsequent internal investigation revealed, the juror Dan did not violate the letter of the charter and protocols for storing service weapons. In fact, he could not have reliably predicted that on that fateful day Close would break into his room and take possession of the barrels. Nevertheless, the insurance company, in order to avoid a protracted legal battle, agreed to settle the claim out of court by paying the families of the deceased and wounded $500,000 in compensation. Joshua Talos, the father of the innocently slain Isabella, was most outraged by the insolence and cynicism of the ill-fated friend Dan. The latter never showed even a drop of remorse for actually condoning the killer by giving him unlimited access to a whole arsenal of lethal weapons. But what caused the sharpest condemnation in Joshua was not even that. What shocked the man most was something else. Dan was not held accountable at all for the improper storage of firearms, because by all legal criteria, the situation corresponded to the corpus delicti. But the most unexpected and least explored aspect of the tragedy lay elsewhere. In his unbearable mental torment, Isabella's father involuntarily began to think more and more often about the possible racial subtext of the crime. After all, his late daughter and her fiancé Darian were representatives of different ethnic groups. So what really drove the degenerated Close when he opened the frenzied fire? Blind hatred of mixed couples as such, or just rabid anger at the dog owners? Unfortunately, neither the official investigation nor the killer himself gave an unambiguous answer to these difficult questions. Darian's life was divided into before and after that tragic June day. Despite a series of super-complex surgical interventions and a long period of rehabilitation, he never fully regained the motor functions of his injured leg. However, all these physical sufferings and tortures paled in comparison with the young man's intolerable mental anguish. Darian was relentlessly haunted by obsessive memories of the horror he had experienced, post-traumatic stress disorder, and a terrible sense of guilt towards his deceased fiancée and her family. Secretly, he replayed the same scene in his head over and over again. I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Until next time, friends.